like the voice of the voices, Mr. Tendani Musekwa from the College of Law. We're going to be talking about the controversial ruling of the constitutional law regarding husbands taking their wives' surnames. And Mr. Musekwa, thank you so much for joining us here on UNISA Radio again.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, he's been a stranger for a bit. But we had to call him to talk about this particular conversation.
Yes.
Tell me, before I start with my question, what is your take?
Well,
When the ruling, was announced and this was what it was, your first thought around it?
well, I was expecting it, by the way.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't say I'm shocked.
Okay.
With the law of South Africa, you should expect anything. Nothing shocks us anymore.
Yeah.
We must always remember that these are not our laws. They were amending their own laws.
Of course.
So
Yes.
there's really nothing towards. It's just a ruling. It remains a ruling.
Yeah.
A very controversial ruling.
Extremely.
But we should not throw tantrums around it.
Yeah.
We will articulate as to what is the legal standpoint. Of course, we must not look at it from only one point of view, but we must look at the traditional aspect, the colonial aspect, how this law was introduced in South Africa, and what remains in the document of South Africa.
Absolutely.
So we engage all those things, and then we'll provide a clear perspective, a decolonial one, a colonial one, and we'll balance the equation as to that particular effect.
No, 100%. Now let's look at the constitutional and legal angle of this particular topic, right?
Yes.
Does South African Constitution adequately protect a husband's right to adopt his wife's surname? Or does it exist only in framework, which is privileged in patriarchal, in a patriarchal aspect or patriarchal tradition?
Well, the argument that many members of society, in actual fact, it's not members of society, it's just a minority group that brings that there's a patriarchal aspect within the law and stuff like that. But looking at the ruling of the Constitutional Court itself, in terms of it being constitutional and in terms of it aligning with the Roman Dutch law as influenced by English law,
Of course, yes.
it is very much correct. We can't dispute it, unfortunately, because it speaks about equality. So it says the Birth and Death Registration Act, it is invalid insofar as it deprives a man from taking a woman's surname. So insofar as. So that is the angle and that is the reasoning of the Constitutional Court, which it goes on to say, it quotes Section 9 of the Constitution, particularly subsection 3, to say, no one might be discriminated. The law may not unfairly discriminate based on gender. So it's gender, sex, what do you call others? All these types of discrimination, but they should not be unfair. So the reasoning of those judges who were sitting in the bench, it was very much interesting, but colonial. They were doing their job. They were applying the law.
I understand.
So I don't think if they had the privilege to apply the African customary law, they would arrive at that immoral decision.
Okay.
But unfortunately, some argue that no, the law was based on moral. The law is based on morals. But I always provide an argument to say the law is not a guardian of moral. Neither is it a guardian of emotions. The law is the law. So what is legally right is not morally correct. Exactly. So
no, I understand, and I think if I am to throw in a question there, you mentioned equality.
Yes.
And you mentioned patriarchal.
Yes.
Or rather, we mentioned patriarchal tradition.
Yes.
Traditionalist or tradition and culture.
Yes.
The angle of it in this instance.
Yes.
You say that the law is the law. It has been there. It was ruled.
Yes.
Legally now in South Africa.
Yes. Yes. Correct.
How are we then to balance tradition and law? Because it's a catch-22. We understand that. And I mean, I was having a discussion with Lebohang just before you came in about equality. Personally, I don't think we can ever be equal.
Well,
Personally, this is my
Okay.
personal opinion. This has nothing to do with UNISA Radio or Tshwane TV. This is my personal opinion, right? But we
yeah.
can be fair in
Yes.
situations.
Yes.
So now let's talk about this particular one.
Yes.
How does then tradition and law correlate or coexist when coming to this topic?
There are different types of traditions. There is the Western tradition,
African.
and there's an African tradition.
African.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So our problems.
I think let me just let's look at both. Let's look at the Western
Yes.
because we are a diverse country.
Exactly.
And then let's look at the African.
That's what they say. Yes. I want to respond to these questions having to balance two traditions. So I'm going to take you back to my initial point to say, what is this law that we're subscribing to? We're subscribing to the Roman Dutch law as influenced by English law. Our problem started in 1652 when Jan van Riebeeck landed in the Cape of Good Hope. They came with their own laws. So it then comes to say, African customary law, it is recognized, provided that it is in line with the Constitution. Who drafted the Constitution? Is it the black majority? No, it is not. Which moral values does that particular Constitution guide? Of course, it will guide those that are predominantly Western. English law, Roman Dutch law. So African customary law has been just reduced to a footnote because it is not, they say it is not codified. Even if it was codified, there is no way that in the history of the world, African customs can align to European customs. African people are people who are very much vested in culture and traditions. Do white people have a tradition? What tradition do white people have? Who took that? Who took the matter to the Constitutional Court? If it was so bothering to us, a society who are Africans, the indigenous people of this country, if it was so bothering to us, why did we not take it ourselves to the Constitutional Court? Look at the race that took it to the Constitutional Court. It is the Western people. It is the settlers trying to protect the aspiration because they know that the Constitution of the Republic of this country predominantly protects Western interests. Settler first. That's my view of the Constitution. The Constitution of this country, even on the land question, the Constitution of this country advocates for the interests of the Westerns. Settler first, indigenous second. That is why African customary law, it is only recognized insofar as it aligns with Western morals. If it is not Western, it is not correct. So this we've been practicing culture for the longest of times. So this must not bother us, by the way. But of course, it has the potential to erase the African customs and the African traditions. Those who are going to align with this decision and want to confine to European standards, I foresee clever blacks. But those who are properly taught and understand culture and understand the consequences of taking such a decision, they will forever shy away from that practice. It does not say we must not practice ours, but it's just giving a privilege to the Western, to the settlers to practice their own culture, which is that of being uncultured.
Okay, you mentioned that those who will go with, if I am to put it in inverted commas, they'll take their wife's surnames will be clever. What do you mean by that?
There are those who think that they are so much educated in a way that they have come to believe the view that came with the colonial Christians. I'm not saying all of them they are Christianity it's coloniality to its core, but those who came with colonial Christians, they teach that ancestors are demons. So the only consequences that people will have is that from the ancestors, not from the law. The law is just merely saying no, a man can now do this. So the law that is in place in South Africa, it is not ours. It is a Roman Dutch law influenced by English law. Done. We're not English, we're not Roman Dutch, we're the indigenous people of this country.
Mm-hmm.
The only law that we subscribe to, even in the villages and wherever we go, we subscribe to customary laws.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see it as problematic. It's just settlers or colonizers documenting their own laws in a piece of paper. Which on that we must have a very serious much unhealthy disregards towards that particular judgment, which seeks to erase our customs and our beliefs and our tradition.
I was about to come to that question. That don't you think when it's like that, doesn't it take us backwards as Africans because we're trying to decolonize so much, but then you find, and I mean it doesn't have to matter, because it's a rule that was given. You can either choose if you want to take your husband, or the husbands want to take their wife's name or whatever, but because of the dominance of white settlers, if I may put it like that they always win, because if then, why wasn't there a point of contestation from black, or rather from an African person's point of view? Or why wasn't there contestation to say, okay, no, wait,
okay,
what's happening here? And I think also maybe it might date back to the Constitution itself to say, because the Constitution was written by, why not,
Let me give you that again in a very interesting way. Settlers are not stupid at all. We must never undermine those comrades. We must never undermine them. They are very smart. You know what they did? This is very much fun. When we were being given the so-called democracy during their time, because they understood very well that they are a minority in this country, and by that time they were using a system that we call a parliamentarian sovereignty, where laws that are passed by parliament would not be contested by the courts, right? Who was dominating in parliament? It is them. How did they dominate in parliament? They ensured that they keep a black person away from votes. You don't vote, you don't participate in governance, right? That was the strategy. When they decided, now, not that they decided, they were forced. When they were forced to give us this democracy that was hard-earned, they decided to say, no, now it's a constitutional democracy. Why? Because they knew that the black man and a black woman will dominate parliament, and each and every law that a black man will pass, they will feel oppressed by it. Hence, they can be able now to do it through the courts, because the law that they are using is the law that they wrote. When we call for decolonization, they say we're barbaric, we're rebellious, we are terrorists, we don't deserve recognition. So they were very smart to say, no, let us give them this democracy of theirs, let us give them this parliament of theirs, but we are not going to give them the constitutional supremacy, in the sense that this constitutional supremacy, we're going to say, well, now, each and every decision that is taken must align with this book, which they wrote. Why not align with what parliament takes? Because in as much as parliament is not perfect, South African parliament is not perfect, but there is where a black man and a black woman consciousness comes back. And I don't think this decision was going to find expression. But unfortunately, we might bring a narrow argument to say, but the decision was taken by blacks. There is nothing that they can do. Even them, they're just creatures of statue. But they can't, their views do not matter. They know very well that even their traditions don't matter. I am yet to see any one of those judges that passed that judgment taking their wife's surname. I'm yet to see it. They won't practice it.
Societal and gender role.
Yes.
And there's like a very big, how can I put it? I don't want to say patriarchy, but systems.
Yes. Yes.
And it's given. You see a girl, you date, you propose.
Yes.
Well, now, because it's more modernized,
yes,
there's an engagement ring that come into place. Then there's the lobola, there's
yes,
the negotiation
yes,
part of the process of
yes,
you marrying that particular person.
Of course.
With this situation,
Yes.
how does gender and societal role play? How does it play out? Do I take out lobola for you? How does it play out?
Well, maybe that's what the Constitutional Court is suggesting. That maybe women these days must pay lobola for men. We don't know, but I don't think that there's any man who is an African who would allow that. Our culture, once that practice starts, that is erasing our culture, because it is not a matter of saying that this lobola is oppressing to a woman. It is not. We are bringing two families together, and even the Bible, to a particular extent, it does say that a man is a provider, and of course we must protect our women. We must protect our families. Women, they play a role. We now play equal roles. So they say, but the reality of the matter is that is not true, and it will never be true. I want to take it to an economic factor. For an example, even if a woman can earn 1 million, a man earns 500,000. Do you know that a woman who goes out there and advocates for feminism to the core, when they get home, they discuss the men's salary, but not the woman's salary? Because the men must provide, the men must protect. But unfortunately, I don't know whether as Africans we've become a cursed nation. We are no longer protecting our women. We are now killing them. We are now raping them. You understand? As this patriarchal issues now has become a big thing, that no, there's patriarchy, there's male dominance. Male dominance in what sense? There is no African man that will allow a woman to pay lobola for them. We must preserve culture. Why do we pay lobola? Why do we build a family? Why does a woman take a man's surname? Why do the kids take the man's surname?
Yes, because I was going to come to that now what does this mean? How does this mean? You plant the seed, but how does that look? How does that look like? And do you think this also kind of challenges the rigid gender roles, like you were saying? Do you think, about patriarchy and men being a provider and a protector? Do you think this rule kind of challenges the rigidness of gender role?
It is just an ink that was wasted on paper. It doesn't change anything. It might change in the face of the public, but where other women would want to practice it and stuff like that. But the reality of the matter is that it does not change anything. And we all know it, that it won't change anything. That is the reality of the matter. I want to make a simple example. It has never been a forced matter for a woman to adopt a man's surname. It has never happened. There are people who are married who are still calling, another one calls herself with her own surname, the other one calls herself with their own surname. But what I suspect with that ruling, and the people that took the ruling there, what I suspect, it was for economic benefits. It was not genuine. And those men who took that ruling, they know very well that it was not for what they're speaking about. To say no, we want the woman to continue with the name, to grow the surname of the father because she's the only girl. But that is not true. It is a man who's trying to. Of course, it's a colonial view. That's what they do. This is a man who's trying to be as associated as possible with the wealth from the woman's side. So this is it's a man who lacks culture and principle, a man who's lazy, a man who can't work and provide for the family, wants to die wealthy because he or she is associated with the surname of this person. It's what colonizers do. You will never find a genuine colonizer. Now they're starting to colonize each other, and that's good. They're fine like that. Africans must stay away from this practice. We are people who are strongly guided by ancestors. These are the same people who came and told us that our ancestors are demons. And our ancestors are not demons. When there's a marriage between two families, I'm saying, culturally, I'm asking for your daughter. Because my surname this side is dying. And I'm coming to the daughter to say, I'm asking that may we please assist each other to grow this particular surname. I'm not saying throw away yours. Hence, you will find in many cases of people who are married, the mother might call a different surname, the father might retain his own surname, and the other spouse retains their own surname. But it is very rare that you find a child who comes from who was not born out of wedlock using the mother's surname. Women understand this thing. It's culture. Africans understand this thing. It's culture. This ruling, it is a ruling for these colonizers and settlers. It's them there. We must not interfere with their things. They're just documenting their things. As they say that African customary law, it is not codified. We shall continue with our practices. That we're not breaking any law. We're just preserving our culture, our roots. We must understand where we come from, and we must never betray that particular roots. We are going to be a cursed nation.
Mr. Musekwa, I hear you loud and clear, and thank you so much for discussing such. It's a very complex. It's a very complex ruling, honestly speaking, and especially from a person who really respects culture and tradition, and not only speaking for myself, but also others. But like you said, a rule or a law is a law. It's not attached to emotion. It's not attached to how we feel about certain things. But when it's placed there, it's placed there, and that's how it is. I guess at the end of the day, it leaves us to really make conscious decisions when coming to certain things, and not be swayed by trends, or not be swayed by an era of some sort. But you mentioned that identity is one needs to stay anchored in their identity, and with this particular one, I think it's really one of those who decide to take the surnames, kudos. Those who don't decide to take the surnames, kudos. It's a personal choice.
Of course.
Honestly, it's a personal choice. And this was Mr. Tendani Musekwa. Thank you again so much for joining us on UNISA Radio. He won't be a stranger anymore. You will be seeing him very soon. I think we also need to talk about the equity and equality thing.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of, we need to be equal. But
no, equality is not a problem.
Equality is not a problem.
Yeah.
But let me not give away much when coming to that particular topic, because it's again, it has a catch-22.
Exactly.
It has a catch-22, but we will discuss it soon. I will call him again in studio to discuss it. 2 minutes in, we are going to be having Dineo Kayambo with our full news bulletin, and then we're going to be joined in studio by Dr. Emmanuel Rowlands. We're going to be talking gender again. You see, guys, gender is a problem. Gender is a problem, but we'll be looking at it in a more GBV. And on his book that he wrote, Male Powerlessness, he's going to be telling us more about it. The context, why did he decide to one, go with this title, two, the research that went into this particular book, because we do have issues of gender in our country, violence that is perpetuated by it, economic struggles that is perpetuated by it. There's a lot of aspects around it, so make sure that you stay connected right here on UNISA Radio and also on Tshwane TV channel 262. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Bravo. I don't like what this life is doing to you. I don't like.
What?